for the header and the title page, and also for the footer, where it says the same thing. Some other examples would be number 7 on page 2 at the top of the page. That was one of the additions. Also, the word review was not in the original document. That's in the first paragraph in with regard to site plan review. That's on page 205. You'll see the word review slightly lighter after site plan, second sentence there. That's another example. Let's see. And on page 4 or 5, on number 10, the third sentence, the assessor clerk is required to certify, in parentheses, sign the application as all abutters, including out-of-town abutters that are adjacent to the property.
Sign the application of all abutters, right?
I mean, yes, we can definitely add that. The sign the application. See, if you that's a parenthetical. So if you put that in there, hopefully it still makes sense. The assessor clerk is required to certify all abutters, including out-of-town abutters that are adjacent to the property. So yes, if you
okay, I see what you're saying.
Yes, but if the board wants to add some other things, that's fine. Number 11, again, the lighter text, using the attached address form. The words attached address form, probably that. And the last page, number 14, there was discussion concerning adding that. There was no 14 in the original document.
So you may remember, I believe it was last Wednesday, I met with George and talked about this, and he forwarded me this copy. I looked at it and then forwarded it out to the whole board and all the alternates. For your review if you were interested in prior to the meeting. So what I was hoping we could do tonight is just look at these changes. These are suggested changes from the July meeting, and hopefully we could maybe take a vote as to which ones we want to keep, which ones we might want to change again. Beyond these changes, one thing that we definitely need to do is there's a document that we need to create, the list of abutters document that needs to be signed, that needs to go with this, as well as I think we called it the address document. Which is the names and addresses of, and if we can make it a somewhat general document for abutters as well as conservation holders. It's like conservation and upstream dam owners and things. So there's several lists that need to be attached to this where the applicant would fill in those names. Yes, Gary?
Just for information, I went through this in Wilkesboro. Recently on a project that I'm doing, and they have the abutters lists that they supply and charge $1 per abutter to someone who comes in to get an abutters list. Then it becomes the town's obligation, as we were talking about with Pam Frazier that time, to provide an up-to-date list for noticing abutters by a party that's making an application. And they charge for that, otherwise it becomes the party's onus to come up with an accurate list, and if they don't, well, they throw the whole thing back to zero again. But that's how they do it in Wolfboro.
So you're saying in Wolfboro, if somebody wants to get the list of abutters, they go to the assessor clerk,
right?
Who then figures out how many abutters there are, and they charge the person based on the number of abutters for an accurate list. For an accurate list, which the town will then live with. Otherwise, you can go to your books and get it yourself. But remember, that happened, and then there were some erroneous problems, yes.
Addresses and this and that, because what was in the books wasn't updated to the tax assessors, mailing addresses, etc.
Yeah.
So.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to make sure that I understand what we're up against here. The lighter typed page 205 on number 7 is the addition that we're to be considered tonight?
Yes, these were the things that are italicized and lighter. And unfortunately, the electronic copy is red, but we don't have a color printer.
Yeah,
the changes that are in the italicized lighter color type are the things that were suggested as potential changes at the July meeting. At that time, that we accepted this as a working document, and these were changes that were suggested by members at that time.
Okay.
They have not been engrossed into the document officially. We have to vote on them to be accepted.
So we're considering to get everybody so I can catch up to you guys.
Sure.
So we are considering the lighter colored type tonight
Correct.
to integrate into the document.
Yep. That's all we're hoping to do tonight, yes.
This, I'm trying to catch up on this too. The proposed application for condition use permit, should this be allowed and conditional use?
No, this is specifically for conditional uses. The conditional uses are segregated from regular uses because we can, like with a regular use, the permitted uses and non-permitted uses. With a permitted use, you have the process for starting that up, but they're not necessarily conditions put on it. Whereas these other uses are extra uses that the town has allowed, but we've allowed them with this potential restriction. That before they can be implemented, they have to go through this permitting process, and that the town has the potential to restrict any activities or operational times or what the planning board in the future sees fit.
Is there an application for allowed uses other than the ones that he's presently permitted for?
Not allowed.
No, there is no applications for
He can
permitted
just
use.
go ahead and do it.
No,
They're allowed.
not the way it is.
That's what I'm trying to...
I think Gary should mention something because you probably know the most about having gone through that whole process and as the chairperson.
This is the way it works with that. There should really be a permit for both conditional and permitted uses, but different. One's applicable to one way to do it, or one type of conditional use, and one's applicable to a permitted use.
Right.
What we've allowed on the mountain, for instance, with our site plan review is just what he's doing up there and what we specifically allowed in the letter.
Right.
What he may still have to go through site plan review to do other permitted uses. But that's the only thing that would kick in, and it might not kick in. The board could waive that. But with a conditional use, then that would just about automatically kick in site plan review. And that would be a whole different process. That's according to Laura Spector. And I understood that. That was explicitly what she was describing, and, you know. So we probably need some kind of lesser application for permitted
In
uses.
addition to this.
In the event that a permitted use was going to require site plan review for traffic flow or some weirdo thing.
Yeah,
Exactly.
or life safety, etc. You know,
Yeah.
so one of these
Yeah.
activities like a
There's
zip
really not
line.
an
Or,
application, it just comes
Yeah.
before the board.
right, but how the way we've got things structured now, I think this is a very good discussion. That there's no flag that might notify the owner that they have to let us know.
Well, my concern is if we have the application for conditional uses, and not one for allowed uses, would that kick it open for him to just do anything, or would he make the assumption that...
No, we can't do it.
You know,
The way I remember,
Once we approve, sorry.
the way I remember Laura saying it is very similar to what Gary was saying. Is that if he chooses, or some subsequent owner chooses to do an additional land use, you know, whether it's zip line or
Change of
whatever,
use.
change of use kicks in, and site plan review is triggered by change of use. Site plan review can be waived if the board sees it's not necessary. Say you're doing astronomy, you're just going to have kids up there with telescopes. Do you need to do a site plan review for that? I don't know. That's for some future board to decide. But
So this is an application for conditional use, but for allowed uses, the owner still has to come before the board.
I don't know. What do you think?
no,
Well, the premise of all of this is that the allowed uses, he doesn't, conditional uses are good for 1 year. He has to repeatedly
that's
come
the
back.
Conditional.
Yeah.
That's what
But
they-
the allowed uses, he doesn't have to go through that process. I mean, these are what he's set forth to do.
they're
It's a
permitted.
one-time deal, so if he changes and he wants to add go-kart racing, whatever it is, whatever might be on the approved list, it's a change of use, he comes before the board, he goes through that process. If we approve it, then he never has to come to the board again for it.
That's
That's
very
the
good
difference
point.
between
Yeah.
the two.
Okay, so allowed uses, he still has to come before the board.
If it's different than what he's doing now.
I would say that
Change of use triggers a site plan review.
Think of-
any use,
Does additional
any
use.
change of use, whether it's
Change
conditional or
of
permitted,
use.
any of those will trigger site plan review.
Yeah.
So if he
Or
wants to do
additional
if he
use.
wants to do a conditional use,
It's a change of use.
he does this additional piece of paperwork, and then goes through site plan review, assuming that we approve the conditional use.
Well, that would all be part of the
Or, I mean, it would,
process.
I mean, right, but I mean, he has to do both in the conditional use case. He only has to do one in the permitted use case.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, in either case, any of the property owners that want to use the land will end up with conditions on them, right? We allowed him to do whatever we permitted him to do with the permitted uses with certain hour of operation limitations and so on. So,
As well as overall timelines. That's one of the aspects
Days
of
of
this is,
operation.
say this
hours
is-
of operation, I mean.
this is something that is on the approved conditional use list, and he's decided, or some subsequent owner has decided that they would like to try this event, this use. They come forward, the board, looking at the use and how he wants to implement it, as well as other factors such as site plan review, can limit the length of the permit, a year, 2 years, 5 years, whatever. And if it works out well, great, he can get a new one. If it works out negatively, the future board can,
Deny.
curtail it or deny it. So,
Or change it, put different.
or change it, and, yeah. So it does give the town that control for these uses that are kind of not expressly permitted, but conditional. So that's a good question. So anyway, so is everybody clear that all we're trying to do with this document tonight is to review these few spots where there's italicized letter print and look at each one and vote on whether or not we want to accept those engrossed into this document and then move on from there?
Yes.
are you anticipating that somebody's going to use the same document for the renewal? Or is there a renewal application separate from this?
I thought this was going to be for both. Here we go, page 3 of 5. Are you applying to renew a previously approved conditional use?
Right.
Right.
But are we expecting that somebody's going to be providing
A butters
butters lists
each time.
and engineers lists and easement lists? I mean, presumably they came up with that to begin with, and so it's probably all the same, and so maybe isn't a huge burden, but the butters list is
Time and effort.
it's time and effort, and it's taking up the assessor clerk's time and effort. Now, maybe we need to do that. I mean, maybe it's the right thing to have a public hearing and have the abutters aware that somebody's trying to renew.
Well, I think we can solve that by making a statement, and if it's not in here, that we have the right to waive some of these conditions.
Or maybe, I
I
mean,
think that's their,
But you know what I'm saying? I mean, it would standardize the form, and then if we have the discretion to say, okay, this is the 3rd year he's been in, he hasn't changed a thing, nobody's complained, why are we gonna make him go through the abutters list, just formality?
I don't think that's in here.
I think the first piece of your question, when I originally put this together, the idea was this to be a single application for all conditions. A new permit, different permit, or renewal. But beyond saying, hey, you don't need to do the different lists, I never thought about that. So I never really gave it a thought.
so there's a lot of things that comes with this, and it extends over several pages. And a couple of them, at least a couple of these bullet items have multiple things they have to do. I'm wondering whether a checklist wouldn't be helpful, and we could then have 2 separate checklists, one for something that's pure renewal, that wouldn't necessarily need all the easement stuff and engineer stuff, and I don't know, or maybe we always need that to be updated, I don't know.
A checklist for the applicant or a checklist for the planning board?
Both, we're both would end up using it, right?
I think that'd be good to do it after we finish drinking.
This document in itself doesn't ask for any engineering plans or anything like that. That would come as
Site plan review.
a site plan review. That's all contained somewhere else. This is just letting the board know the person is interested and that the process is going to start. So we're not
We're
asking
not
for
trying to
engineering.
adopt the whole thing as,
Mhm.
we're accepting the changes to the working document.
Correct.
No.
No, we're not accepting the whole document as final.
Well, you've got all the
What
easements,
you need to
all the
do here-
easements and everything else,
If you're applying for this property
Thanks, Ed.
condition on a renewal, renew a previous, if it's yes, then you just put down skip to line 14.
Yeah.
It could be as simple as that.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm a little concerned about what Mr. Nason brought up about waiving the butters notification. I think that's something that we should pay